Have you ever wondered how we get crops that are just bigger, stronger, and produce way more food than they used to? You might think it's all about GMOs or some kind of fancy fertilizer, but a lot of the time, the answer is actually one of nature's most powerful and, honestly, most fascinating secrets. It's a phenomenon called heterosis.
So what is this secret, really? How do you take two parent plants that are perfectly fine, but maybe not world beaters, and create an offspring that blows them both out of the water?
Well, it all comes down to this incredible biological process, which you might also hear called hybrid vigor. Basically, it's what happens when you cross two different, often inbred, parent lines. The result is a first-generation hybrid that is just better. We're talking more vigorous, higher yielding, and way more resilient. This really shows you the two sides of the same genetic coin. On one side, you've got heterosis, creating these awesome offspring. But on the other, you have its exact opposite, inbreeding depression. That's what happens when you keep self-pollinating a plant and the offspring get weaker and weaker. It all points to one fundamental truth. Genetic diversity is a really, really good thing. Now, this idea of hybrid vigor, this magic, it's nothing new. It's actually a biological mystery that has fascinated scientists for centuries, and that includes some pretty famous names. So, while Charles Darwin was writing about this all the way back in 1876, the official term heterosis came from a guy named George Scholl. And here's the important part. He picked a neutral term on purpose. He wanted to describe the effect, these stimulating effects of hybridity, because even way back then, he knew there wasn't one simple cause. The mystery had layers. So how did this scientific curiosity transform into something that literally changed the world and what we eat every day? Well, that brings us to the hybrid food revolution. This number pretty much says it all. Take maize or corn, for example. The grain yield from a hybrid plant can be more than 100% greater than the average of its parents. I mean, think about that. That's double the output just from strategic breeding. And as you can imagine, that kind of dramatic increase didn't just stay in the research lab. Harnessing heterosis became the foundation of a massive, multi-billion-dollar global industry. It's a huge part of what keeps our global food supply secure. And its impact is just everywhere, seriously. From the corn in your food, to the cotton in the shirt you're wearing, to the sugar you might put in your coffee. Hybrid vigor is at work all around us. It's one of the most important innovations in modern history, and most of us have never even heard of it. So the big question is, how does it actually work? I mean, what's going on at the genetic level? For more than a century, scientists have been trying to crack that code, and they've come up with a few key theories. But before we get into the theories, it's pretty amazing to see just how fast this all happened. The journey from a scientific observation to a commercial product was incredibly quick. Once Scholl and another scientist, East, rediscovered this in corn, it took less than 15 years for the first bag of hybrid corn to be sold to farmers. And that sparked the revolution we were just talking about. Okay, so theory number one, it's called the dominance hypothesis. The easiest way to think about it is like building a fantasy sports team. Each parent plant has some star players. Those are the good, dominant genes. But they also have some benchwarmers, the not-so-great recessive genes. The hybrid gets to combine the rosters from both teams, letting the star players from each parent cover for the weaker ones. And here's a slightly more technical look at how that works. Let's say the hybrid gets a really beneficial dominant gene, we'll call it Big A, from one parent, and another great one, Big B, from the other parent. These powerful genes basically hide or mask the negative effects of their weaker recessive partners, little a and little b. So the hybrid ends up with the best of both genetic worlds. But what if it's more than that? That brings us to the second idea, the overdominance hypothesis. This theory suggests that for some genes, just being a hybrid, that is, having two different versions of a gene at one specific spot on a chromosome, is actually better than having two copies of the same version. The combination itself creates a superior result. And you can see that effect right here. The hybrid isn't just better than the average of its parents, it's actually better than both of them. It's not just covering up bad genes anymore. In this case, the unique combination creates a whole new level of performance. The whole is literally greater than the sum of its parts. And just to add another layer of complexity, we have the epistasis hypothesis. This idea says, hey, maybe it's not about individual genes at all. Maybe it's about how all these different genes from all over the genome interact with each other. Think of it like a complex engine.
The magic isn't in any single gear, but in how all the gears work together in a new, powerful combination.
So we've got these three really powerful theories. But as you've probably guessed, when it comes to biology, the real story is almost always more complicated and way more interesting. What this all boils down to is that there's no single silver bullet. There's no one answer. Dominance, overdominance, epistasis, they probably all play a part. The incredible performance of a hybrid seems to be a systemic property, something that emerges from the entire, unbelievably complex network of all these genetic interactions working together.
And right when you think you're getting a handle on it, enter epigenetics. You could think of these as molecular factors that act like little switches on the genes, turning them on or off without actually changing the DNA code itself. And it turns out that in hybrids, these epigenetic patterns can change, adding a whole other layer of regulation that contributes to that hybrid vigor.
This quote from the research really sums up how scientists think about this today. The search isn't for one single heterosis gene anymore. It's about understanding the big picture, the fundamental biological rules for how genes team up and interact in these powerful, non-additive ways to create such amazing results. So where does all of this leave us? And what could it possibly mean for the future of, well, everything from farming to biology itself? All right, let's just boil it all down real quick. Heterosis is this amazing phenomenon where a hybrid is better than its parents. It's the engine that powers a huge chunk of our global food supply. And the cause, well, it's a beautiful, complicated dance between multiple genetic and epigenetic mechanisms, a puzzle we are still working to piece together. And that leaves us with one last really big question. For 100 years, we've been using this incredible natural power without fully understanding how it works. So, as we finally start to crack the code, to truly get a grip on the molecular basis of vigor, what incredible new possibilities are we about to unlock for our food, our planet, and our future?